What you see here is one of the largest collections of Chatham lab-grown flux process rubies and sapphires in private hands. These gems were grown by the exclusive flux process of Chatham Laboratories at Chatham Created Gemstones in San Francisco, California. What is interesting about all of these gems is that they were grown atom by atom in a solid platinum crucible over a period of about 11 months, a process that cannot be hurried, that requires extreme temperature control and formula control. Basically, the components of ruby and sapphire are held at a temperature that allows the crystals to grow slowly and carefully, and that careful attention to growth is reflected in the beautiful natural crystals that produce these beautiful gemstones that you see here. Tom Chatham, president of Chatham Created Gemstones, even stated that these gems had no analog and that the competing processes produced stones of inferior quality and simple manufacture. What is a shame, but what I have uncovered, is the fact that Chatham no longer produces these particular gemstones for retail. Years ago, the Chatham Company, headed by Tom Chatham, chose to abandon the flux process because it was too labor intensive, too energy intensive, and too subject to degradation if a minor change occurred during the crystallization process. But what the average buyer of a Chatham gemstone today does not understand is that they are now receiving the very technology that Tom vilified as being unsuitable for the finest jewelry, namely Tucholsky pulled sapphire. If you look at these gemstones, you will see that they possess natural crystal faces. The uncut stones look like uncut sapphires and rubies. But a Tucholsky stone, which is what you will receive today, comes from rough that looks like this. It's pulled from a machine that creates it within a few days, growing perhaps an inch per hour. A seed is dipped into a container of molten sapphire or ruby and then slowly pulled upward, producing this sort of rough gemstone that looks like glass, as Tom was quoted as saying. This is what you receive today if you were buying a Chatham Created ruby or sapphire. Obviously cut, not as obvious in terms of what it is you're getting, but the fact of the matter is, this here is much, much less expensive to produce and produces gemstones that do not have the same light handling capabilities as you would see with a gemstone or crystal such as this here. This is what an authentic flux-grown ruby uncut looks like. It has crystal faces. You could teach a course in crystallography or mineralogy from these crystals. They take about 11 months to crystallize, and for that reason are quite expensive. But what has happened at Chatham is they have chosen to transition from this superior product to this product, which even Tom Chatham acknowledged was inferior. They don't talk about it. They don't mention, oh, I have changed the formulation without telling you. Kind of like New Coke without the advertising. But what you're getting is a product that is much less expensive to produce, can be produced in huge volume, and has none of the pedigree that you'll find in a real Chatham crystal. Now, these that you see here, these were grown by John Chatham in the 1980s. But Tom chose to buy out his family of their position in the company and move the entire operation, or most of it, to the Far East. Most of the gem rough that Chatham sources today comes from third-party manufacturers. Very little is produced in-house. The only exception, I believe, is they may still produce some flux-grown emerald, because that was what Carol Chatham and John Chatham became experts in. But the fact of the matter is, this ruby that you see here has a whole different pedigree. It has a whole different value proposition. You can't find these today. The fact is, these gemstones are unique. They were grown under conditions that I don't believe even any of the scientists at Chatham today fully understand. And so instead, they have fallen back on this technology, which is widespread, used in lasers. I'm not saying that this is the equivalent of the old verneuil gemstones, which are not as good as what you're seeing here. But this here is nowhere near this gem with the light handling capability, which you can even see just looking at it. Even under this poor quality video, you can tell that there is a tremendous difference between this gem and this. And the question I ask everybody to consider is, what are you getting for your payment to Chatham for what should be a pedigree gemstone, lab-grown stone done by the flux method, but which is quietly replaced? Now, this isn't a willful misdirection. They're not saying that their gemstones are flux-grown any longer. In fact, what you'll see is complete ambiguity on their website, attempting to talk up the Chatham value proposition. But at the end of the day, it was the ability to produce the flux-grown gemstone that produced these incredibly deep, rich colored stones that handle light in a completely different way than the pulled ruby or sapphire. So these stones likely today would cost many times what a pulled ruby or sapphire would cost. But you're not being told that. You're not being told that this is what you're getting. They fall back on the Chatham pedigree, but the fact of the matter is, you're not getting this here. You're not getting these crystal face gemstones that produce faceted gems that are much, much more vibrant and beautiful. So I would just say, those of you who are considering purchasing a high-end lab-grown ruby or sapphire, consider carefully what it is you're paying and how that price correlates to the technology used to create the gemstone that will actually be delivered to you. Don't just accept that you're getting a flux ruby because Chatham produced flux rubies many, many years ago. And for years afterward, they had a stockpile that they released. But that's basically gone now. You won't see advertisements for flux-grown gems, certainly not flux-grown rubies or sapphires, at the Chatham website. So that's all I wanted to say. This has bothered me for a while, and I think that the buying public has a right to know. Take care.